Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm Peach's virtual assistant. Back when I had a spending problem, it wasn't uncommon for me to walk away with 4 pairs of shoes put on my credit card. But today I've got it under control and I'm credit card debt free like a boss. Now, check this out.
As an employee, you're basically punching the clock and you're working based on how much time you put in. When you're the owner, you're working for profits.
My guest on the show today is the one and only Nick Loper. He is the host and founder of the Side Hustle Nation podcast. Now, Nick's coming on the show today to talk about side hustling or generating income alongside your full-time job. He is an expert in it. He's interviewed over 250 people who are basically professional side hustlers or taking their side hustle and turning it into a full-time job. Nick's big thing is he wants you to work for profits, not wages. So without further ado, let me bring on Nick Loper, the host and founder of the Side Hustle Nation podcast. What's up, Nick? Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I'm excited to have you on because I have a real podcaster on. Not like I say I'm a podcaster, but you're an actual podcaster. Like you've got awards for it. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Today is the day. Chris, thanks for having me, man.
Tell me a little bit about Nick Loper. I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of yours. You're Side Hustle Nation. You're, I would say, a serial entrepreneur and an all over just extreme hustler, to say the least. But tell me a little bit about Nick Loper. Give us a little background on you.
Background on me, man. How far back do you want to go?
Let's go womb. Let's go in the womb. No, I'm just kidding. So when I first met you, it was a couple years ago. We met up at a conference. I think you were just maybe a year into your business getting started with your podcast, but you had told me a lot about you are a serial entrepreneur junkie, man. You have gone all over the place and I love it. You've had some really cool ideas. So let's share some of those because I think people listening to this are going to get a lot of value out of the crazy ideas you have for people to make money. Sure.
So we can go back. I mean, I was the kid, trying to sell baseball cards and candy at the end of the driveway and selling candy at summer camp and stuff. But what really probably bit me with the entrepreneurial bug was this painting internship I had during college. It's like one of these days, they probably had them at your school too, where it's like, hey, we're going to assign you a territory, assign you a zip code. It's your job to go paint as many houses as you can over the course of the summer. It was just like this crazy stressful time, but also crazy rewarding, both like on the kind of short-term standpoint to stand back at the end of the week from the sidewalk and be like, hey, we turned this thing from ugly to like looking pretty good. And then at the end of the summer to say, hey, we did it 25 times and, we made way more money than I ever expected to as a college student. And, we helped employ people and we helped people fix up their houses. Like it was really kind of a cool thing. But it was also my first taste of working for profits and not wages. And that was like, this ding, 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 like light bulb moment that probably scarred me for life. Scarred you for life. So as you're telling the story about you painting, I'm like picturing, American Pie. You remember the movie? Yeah. Is that what you guys were like? You shirts off, painting the side of houses, that kind of deal? Yeah, and crazy shenanigans upstairs. No, unfortunately, it didn't always end up that way. But it was cool. It was just a weird, it was a cool like kind of blue collar work experience to like, and I put in some crazy hours. It's like, okay, a bunch of 19-year-olds with paint sprayers. Like, what could go wrong, right? A lot of problems. Like, if I screwed up your house, I'm sorry. We tried to make it right. But okay, so you made a good point there. A takeaway you said, and I remember. I think when we first met, I think we were having lunch somewhere, and you had said something along the same lines, and it stuck with me because I don't think I've heard that before. But you said profits versus wages. What do you mean by that? As an employee, you're basically punching the clock and you're working, based on how much time you put in. When you're the owner, you're working for profits. And hopefully there's a lot more leveraged versus what you can put in because you're leveraging other people's time, other people's, or maybe your own materials. But like there's more upside for you rather than just straight up, punching the clock in and out and doing it that way. Does that make sense? It does make sense. And I remember when you first told me that a couple of years ago, you had mentioned that, and it made me think right away. When I first started my business, I was not making any money. I don't think anybody, did you start in day one where you just, bringing home a steady paycheck? Or for me, it didn't work out like that. And not so I'm guessing not for you, correct? Yeah. And so I remember especially in the online world, I can make more money by working for these
wages, right? Just go back to work and I can make more money. And I think that's the biggest hang up so many people have, that, they have a job and maybe they like it, maybe they don't like it, but it's guaranteed pay, right? Especially if you're like on a biweekly or monthly pay or something like that. And so then you get this idea that, I want to create my own paycheck. I don't want to work for my paycheck anymore. But there's that gap in between where you're basically working for either no money or working for an extremely low hourly rate until you're able to get it going. I would say maybe I'm a little bit slower than most people. And I know, talking to some other people and some of the people you've had on your show as well, you're like, wait, you did 100,000 in your first year? Like, how?
I know. I'm always like, wait a minute, take me back, because I missed something in there, It's kind of crazy to see. It's like, so to your point, it's like a very linear relationship, right? I'm putting hours in, I'm getting dollars out. Whereas, from the business owner perspective, and you could, look this up in Rich Dad, Poor Dad's like cash flow quadrant and everything, right? But it's like the potential for much more exponential, although you might even have a little bit of a dip at the bottom, when you're first starting out. It's like, okay, I now have startup costs. There's going to be this time where I'm not working for anything. I'm not seeing any results from this. If I'm building my blog, if I'm writing my book. And that's kind of the beauty of doing it as a side hustle, is you've got, hopefully, your steady job, your employer is kind of your silent partner and kind of paying your bills during that ramp up time. It affords you maybe the freedom to kind of work on those more speculative projects, versus if you're the person who's kind of coming to it from the standpoint of desperation, like, holy crap, I need to make rent next month.
Yeah, your back's up against the wall. Just a couple weeks ago, we had Kelly Snyder. She was talking about kind of the same thing. So she quit her job in 2008, but it was before everything started really crashing. It was at the very beginning of 2008. So she quits her job, and her husband's a contractor, and she's like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. It's going to be great. And then about 6 months later, if you were especially like in the world of contracting, right? Like it really just threw the world upside down. She was like, the reason why I think I had success early on is because I didn't have a choice. Like we had to eat food and pay the rent and, keep the lights on. The people we've interviewed that have had like early on success, sometimes it has that story to it. Like, I didn't have a choice. So, and to me, I think you got to take that leap at times. And I still struggle with that. I tell people I'm still a full-time firefighter. I love my job. I don't dislike my job at all. That point is like, I'm running, as my business over here increases and grows is great. I love it. But also, comes more responsibility. And now I'm finding myself and I'm like, am I sitting here running 2 full-time jobs? This was supposed to be my side hustle, and no pun intended, but now I feel like I'm running 2 full-time jobs, and it's fun, but it's also like, am I going to get gray hair earlier for this? Am I like wearing down,
Hey,
I don't know.
Just be grateful you still have your hair.
All right, we're gonna put pictures of Nick in the show notes. That's classic. So Nick, tell me about starting up then. So you started painting. What else did you do?
Kind of the start of like the online business journey was with this internship later in college with this company called OnlineShoes.com. It's this company in Seattle. They started out with like a brick and mortar shoe store in Seattle, and had the novel idea at the time, which was like 1996, and I joined them several years later, to put some of their inventory online. And of course, over the next decade, the online portion of their business like grew leaps and bounds faster than the brick and mortar location. So I came on as a marketing intern, working in, on their affiliate program, on pay-per-click advertising. And that was my first exposure to any of this stuff, to e-commerce, to SEO. And it was really cool. I was like, had built like little dumb, student web pages and stuff before, but like this was, a legit business. And as part of my role was like to manage their affiliate program. And so what happened after that internship was like, well, maybe I could be an affiliate, just like these people that I was helping work with at the company. So I became an affiliate of theirs and several other of their competitors, other footwear retailers, and started actually with a budget on AdWords of $1 a day. So this is Google's like text advertising program back in the day, and trying to sell specific models of shoes. Like if you typed in like, Nike Shox model XYZ or whatever, like I'd have an ad on the sidebar that would link to whatever store I thought had the best deal at the time with my affiliate link. I don't even know if this is even still like allowed in Google, but that's how I got started. And then fast forward to post graduation and getting a real job. Like my theory was I could scale this up if I built a website, because it was really a pain in the butt to keep swapping out these links as stuff would go out of stock, as the prices would change and stuff. So ended up hiring a development team to build out this website. It was originally called shoesrus.net. Eventually it was called shoesniper.com. I wish I spent more than like 2 minutes looking at a domain name in the very beginning, but it was a comparison shopping site for shoes, and it made money as an affiliate on a performance basis, on a commission basis from Zappos, from Amazon, from all these other stores.
So shoesniper.com is, people are wondering, you keep saying the word affiliate. Basically, it's a referral program. So people go to shoesniper.com, they click on a link, it takes them to wherever they're going to purchase a shoe, and the Zappos, whoever, sends a thank you commission back to Nick, correct?
Yep.
What kind of income were you generating with something like Shoe Sniper?
At its peak, this was like a $20,000 or $30,000 a month business. By the time I felt comfortable quitting my job, it was, I don't know if it was, so I was working for Ford at the time. So I started this thing like 2005, 2006, quit my job in 2008, similar to Kelly, and just before all the stuff hit the fan.
Yeah.
I don't know that it had fully replaced my day job salary at that point, but I did have a track record of earnings history, and it was at least enough to cover my expenses. I think I wanted to see like 6 or 12 months of like, okay, it's earning at least enough to cover my expenses, which at that time were probably less than $2,000 a month. But yeah. I saw with with an extra 40, 50 hours a week to dedicate to it, I was pretty confident I could get it to that level, because it was one of those things, even at that time, if I spent the weekend like hustling and building ads for this thing, I would see the benefits of that for, weeks and months down the road, versus if I spent, the extra, burn the candle at both ends working my day job, like I would not see any extra benefit from that, at least in terms of, how much I was earning.
Yeah, with your online business, you're going to create something online and it's going to produce a recurring revenue well after you create it. Kind of, I guess that's why I think so many people flock to the blogging world or the online digital space, is being able to create something digitally, have it live there, and produce income while you sleep. That's kind of I think that's the dream, that's the goal. And that's exactly how it works, though. I mean, I have a friend, I say this a lot on the podcast. So if you guys listen to every episode, you're going to be like, he's saying this again. But so I have a friend, he owns a landscaping company, and he's like, I don't get your online business. Like, I don't understand how it even works. And I was like, can you imagine if you mowed this lawn perfectly? You spent so much time, you made it perfect, it looks great, and it never regrew. It just looked like this forever. And they paid you every single week for doing their yard. I'm like, it's kind of like that. He's like, man, maybe I'm in the wrong business. Tell me about the leap then that you made from going from Ford to straight up online entrepreneur.
It was a transition period. It was that side hustle period of trying to build it up nights and weekends. I remember I was out to dinner with my boss, and and this is that summer of 2008. And even then, even having kind of that track record, and I'm like kind of having that in my back pocket of knowing like, I don't really need this job. What's the rules? Like I'm only here, for 6 months or until the next bad meeting. And it was just like kind of like, it was an empowering place to be, right? To be like, look, if this ever starts to really suck, like, hey, I could take it or leave it. Like I don't need to be here. But even then, it was like, am I allowed to go out on my own? Like, am I allowed to cut my own paycheck? Like, it was kind of a weird, scary leap to make. I remember it still took like a couple beers at dinner to get up the nerve to say, look, I'm out of here, man. And it was like this huge weight off my shoulders, just like a cool burden being lifted. And then it hasn't exactly been, rainbows and unicorns since then, but I'm glad I got out when I did.
Okay, so you make that decision, right? You make that leap where you're going to leave. So what does it look like immediately? Because here's what I know is I read the emails that people send, and they're like, hey, Chris, I love having so-and-so on their podcast. They talked about how, they're generating $50,000 a month. That would be amazing. But the transition period of leaving my steady full-time job to go out there and create something that can pay me. And I know that if I put in effort, it will, but it's not going to happen overnight. So what was that transition period like? I mean, when you leave your steady paid job, was there a period where you're not getting paid any income? Was there a period where it dipped down, like you said in Robert Kiyosaki's book? How did that look?
Well, what happened was something that wasn't even really on my radar, right? So I kind of had built this track record of revenue and said, okay, if I have this much time extra to dedicate to it, like I think I can get here in 3 months. I think I get here in 6 months, and then the holiday time. But what happened was on my first day of retirement, I call it, like my first day of self-employment, all hell broke loose. Like Google shut down my advertising account, which was 80% of the traffic and revenue like gone in an instant. And you go through all, the 7 stages of anger and denial and all this stuff. And you're trying to find somebody to talk to. And like, what, you had no problem with this for the last 2 years. Like, why now? Why today? What's going on? You're like, I just turned in the keys to my company car. Of course, you can't find anybody. They're really dodgy about like what you did to offend them. Or ultimately they came back and said, hey, your site is the sole purpose of your site is to drive traffic to other sites. I was like, Google, that's the sole purpose of Google. Like, who are you to talk? And It was just probably wasn't the best reaction. But, so what we did kind of now having way less income coming in, the economy tanking all around and kind of being forced to say, well, I'm all in on this, so I need to figure out how to make this work. So what we ended up doing was investing in some additional development, like having to spend more money on developers to kind of bring the site within what we thought, and again, all speculative at this point, what we thought might, win back their good graces, basically adding a balance of internal links and extra content on the page. So it's like, okay, you could search by category, you could search by price, you could search by size, whatever it is. Like instead of just like, here's your link to Zappos, here's your link to online shoes, here's your link to shoes.com or whatever. And they came back 3 months later, and I think it was another like 15 grand in development or something, like kind of a stressful time. I still had hair when I quit my job, probably didn't by the end of this. They came back in an email and said, okay, it looks like we made an error. You're good to go. And I'm like, okay, screen capture, print this out. Like I'm putting this in a safe place in case you ever try and pull these shenanigans again. But it was thankfully off to the races right after that, and had a great few years.
Everyone, Nick, that's had extreme level of success on this podcast has some kind of story like that where, episode 38, John Gaston retires at 34 years old. And so he's telling the story, but he had to go through literally hell to get there. I mean, like complete dip in everything. He basically had to start over from scratch after he had built this massive business. And so yours is a little bit different. You finally leave your job, like had a couple beers, said, okay, I'm done. This is it. And then literally the first day of your brand new entrepreneurship solo, this is it type world crashes down on you. But what I'm thinking is, I bet you that if you would have still been employed by your full-time job and maybe I'd be wrong, but I don't know if your back would have been up against the wall as much, and I don't know if you would have taken the action necessary to get through that. Does that make sense? Yeah,
that's why I'm so glad I got out when I did, because had I not had all that extra time, that was like that was all I had going. I thought, hey, this could be my thing forever. And had I not had that, had I still had, the 40, 50 hours a week of the day job, I might have just said, hey, this shoe thing had a good run. Now it's over. Time to move on. I like that would have been soul crushing because I had been looking forward to getting out, basically since I started. But it was that's kind of scary to think about. Like I'm very glad that I got out when I did.
It's funny that you talked about the Google pretty much just pulling the rug out and shutting you down. We talked a little bit about this before we hit record, but this last month and a half, we're recording this beginning of December is when we record this. So pretty much from I would say April all the way to November, we ran the same Facebook ad, literally the same image, the same copy, driving traffic to our website, to our course. And it's been doing very well for us, and we've had no problems. And so I wake up one morning and I check our ad spend for the day. This is about November 10th, 11th. I log in and it says your Facebook account has been deactivated. Not like your ad has been disapproved. It's just been deactivated, and there's nobody to contact. There's nothing. You can't do anything. And so I'm like, what happened? I didn't make any changes. It's literally been the same ad for, 8 months, like nothing has changed. What's going on? I reached out into a couple of the same, Facebook groups that we're part of, some of these business groups and entrepreneur groups. And what I found out is actually this has been going on. They're calling it I guess they call it the black hole of Facebook. For some reason, there's some bots that are literally just completely shutting accounts down. So today is actually December 6th. So we almost went a whole month without being able to run one single ad, which, in a good majority of the revenue for our site and our course and everything comes through that marketing channel. It forced me to reevaluate and say, am I leaning too heavy on, one platform? I think just like anything, when things start to become easy easy as in things are going almost too well to be true, pay attention, because that's to me what I've learned is this is a red flag. If things are too easy to be true, they're too easy to, it's too easy to be true. And so that was a wake up call for me that I needed, because now it's causing me to now focus on, you can't lean too heavily on just Google or on Facebook or on Pinterest or whatever your marketing is or whatever your business strategy is. If you lean too hard on that, now you are basically going back to working for that wage, right? Because you are now working underneath them in a way. That was a lesson that I'm glad I learned. On November 10th, I wasn't very happy at all. And I'm sure on the first day that you started your career as an entrepreneur, you probably weren't thrilled that Google was teaching you a lesson.
Yeah, bad news. Chris, I'm curious, what inspired you to start your site? Was that the first side hustle? Because every firefighter I know has at least one side hustle going on.
Yeah, so every firefighter, I know, does have a side hustle. So I'll be pretty transparent here, Nick. I don't think I've mentioned this ever. I love being a firefighter. So I took a promotional exam right when I was able to test. It was from a firefighter. The next one would be like a paramedic. So I took the paramedic exam and, studied really, 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 really hard and became a paramedic. And I'm like, okay, this is exactly how it should work. And then when I had, I think 3.5, 4 years on, one of my goals was to take the next promotional exam I could at that time. And for me, it was to drive the fire truck, become an engineer. So I studied really, really hard. I always say you're not going to be able to outwork me, right? You could outsmart me, but you can't outwork me. I will outwork you as far as studying, putting in the effort required. I'll go meet with the right people and do whatever. So practice driving nonstop. And I took the engineer's test and right away got promoted, right? So this was kind of this trajectory in my mind I was on. It was, if you work really, really, really hard at something, you will reap the rewards of that, whatever you put in. So then the next step is when you have about, 7.5, 8 years on, you are eligible to take the captain's test, which is like the person in charge of the fire truck. And so, I did the exact same process that got me through paramedic school, the exact same process that allowed me to become an engineer right away. I put in massive levels of action, right? Massive levels of effort, realized that I was going to out hustle my mind, anybody out there. And that's how I was going to get to where I wanted to go. When the results came out of that captain's test, I did horrible. I mean, it kind of like,
Could you sense it coming?
In the face. What's that?
could you sense it? Like, do you have that feeling like, and during school, like you walk out a test and you're like, that did not go well, or did you think you nailed it?
No, even worse. I knew I nailed it. When I walked out of there, I don't want to say too much here. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but when I walked out, I knew I nailed it, and when I left my interview, I knew I nailed it. Right, and without saying so many words, you are kind of given that smile and that nod, like, great job, like you did a great job, and I'm like, awesome, and nailed it, came home to my wife. I'm like, I nailed it. So I'll just put it in perspective here. So they're going to make a list of like 125 people, right? It's a huge city. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the country. So they're going to make a list of 125 people, and they were going to promote, I think, 80 people, which is like, seriously? You can get a D in class and still be, promoted. So I wasn't worried at all, put it that way, at all. I'm like, I have to just be 80 or below, and they're going to make a list of 125 people. So, the letter comes in the mail. My wife's next to me, and I'm like, here it is. Let's open this thing. I'm excited. And the number says 122.
Ouch.
And I'm looking at it going, what? This has to be a mistake. So anyway, long story short, I just decided at that moment right there. I mean, I went through that with the 7 stages of like the anger thing that you talk about as well, Yeah. But after I came out of that, I decided, you know what? I don't know if I'm built to let other people make decisions for me. As far as in my job, in my career, I still love being a fireman, but I want to be able to have more control over my future. I want to have more control over my pay. I want to have more control over, what I can do in life. And I realized that when you go and work for somebody else, and that's not a bad thing, but when you go and work a job or work a career and you are an employee of that organization, the sky is not the limit, right? You might be told that, but how can the sky be the limit, right? You only have so many places to promote people. If everybody there says the sky's the limit, there's only one fire chief. So right. The sky is not the limit, right? My parents are both entrepreneurs, and I remember having that feeling like, this is not it for me. There has to be a little bit more out there. And I still battle with that because, I love being a fireman. It is a great job. I'm around some of the best people, I think, on the planet when I go to work, right? But I also enjoy being an entrepreneur, starting a side hustle and like literally watching it grow and then looking back 2 years going, I cannot believe I built this. Like this is so rewarding on that end too. So that's how I got into the world of being an entrepreneur, was failure. I had to fail at something else.
That's probably not uncommon. It kind of reminds me of a story from Vincent Puglisi. He's a sports photographer. So he was in like Indiana. So he's covering a small town newspaper in Indiana, covering the Colts and the Titans and stuff. And he wins this prestigious award. He wins like International Sports Photographer of the Year. It's like a big deal. As he walks into his boss's office and the boss is like, Vincent, I fought for you. I fought for 4%, but I could only get you a 3% raise. And he's just like, you got to be kidding me. He's like, that was the moment for him. He's like, this is not going to work. Like, this is not sustainable. And so he ended up going out on his own, shooting 1 million weddings. And like, now he's got his own business. Like, but it kind of, sometimes it takes like that moment of like, this light bulb moment or this realization moment. Like, look, I got to do my own thing.
That guy sounds like the same story with my dad. As I remember my dad going, Chris, when's your next raise? This is when I got hired, as a new firefighter. And I said, next year. And he goes, how do you know? I'm like, well, when I have a year on, I'll get a raise. And he goes, well, what if you work harder? I'm like, no, it's next year. And that was kind of like the light bulb went off then too. It's like, oh, I see what you're saying. The thing about being an entrepreneur or creating a side hustle is it's funny. If you want a raise, you can go get one. Like you don't have to wait for it. Right? You don't have to wait until, as I'm growing Money Peach, I don't say, I can't wait for November to come where I get a raise, right? I say, I'm going to create another revenue stream, or I'm going to build this relationship, or I'm going to renegotiate, one of the affiliates we have, or I'm going to add on a new affiliate, or I'm going to go, whatever it might be, right? The sky's the limit, and it's different. Now, with the good comes the bad. The bad is, there's no guarantee you're getting a check next week, right?
Yeah.
You can build in some guarantees by diversifying and increasing revenue streams, but there's no guarantee that, if you have a good week or a bad week at your job, you're probably still going to get paid. And if you have a good week or a bad week or a good month or a bad month, that's going to directly reflect, the income that hits your bank account when you own your own business. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people say they want to get paid on performance, but when it comes down to it, there's a lot of safety in just cashing in and getting paid based on what they tell you you're going to get paid. It's a rare, it's not for everybody. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
What would life feel like if you no longer had to worry about money? What would life look like with $10,000 in the bank and zero debt? Do you realize you're really only a few decisions away from living life on your terms and not the bank's? How do I know this? Well, because we were once living paycheck to paycheck, completely broke and facing a mountain of debt. However, fast forward to today, we're debt-free, we're building wealth, and we live life on our terms, not the bank's. So now it's your turn. I would love for you to join me on my free workshop where I share the same step-by-step system we use to take back our life and our money once and for all. So head on over to moneypeach.com/workshop and grab your free spot in this online training that you're going to absolutely love. Once again, that's moneypeach.com/workshop.
I want to talk about Side Hustle Nation because, kind of a side note, Nick, I don't think I've told you this before, but I have a post on Money Peach that is a side hustle post. Right now it's called the top 84 side hustles.
Okay.
And the neat thing is if you go into the Google machine and you type in side hustle or side hustle ideas or something like that, you can find me like usually 3 or 4 down. But the first 2 spots are this guy named Nick Loper from Side Hustle Nation.
Hey,
So
quit
tell me
trying to
about Side
take over
Hustle
my
Nation.
Google rankings.
Oh, yeah.
It's a community and resource for aspiring and part-time entrepreneurs. It's about how to make money outside of your day job. So whereas Chris, your stuff is like very holistic and well-rounded. Hey, we're going to try and pay down debt and we'll talk about investments and all this stuff. Like the side hustle stuff is much more singularly focused on, this freelancing stuff, this blogging stuff, this a little bit on the investing side, but more creative investments or alternative investments. And then just like, how people are getting it done outside of the world of traditional employment.
And I don't think you do it justice. So the Side Hustle Nation podcast is not just a podcast. I mean, this thing, how many episodes do you have, Nick?
260 is coming out tomorrow.
So 260 episodes. And was it last year you were one of the Podcasters of the Year award at the FinCon Awards? And it's a very, very, very successful podcast. I've met complete strangers that don't know that you and I know each other, and they listen to the Side Hustle Nation podcast. So just to do it justice, as like Money Peach is a growing podcast and Side Hustle Nation is a podcast, right? That's kind of the way I would say it. So I listened to the show and I've gotten some amazing ideas for some of your guests. And sometimes you get some really big name guests on there. I'm like, I got to find out what they're doing. I mean, obviously you have 260 episodes, but let's talk about some of the very unique ways people were able to generate income. And the reason why I asked that, Nick, is I think a lot of people listening to the show right now, they're doing their budget because they went to Money Peach's website and they downloaded the free budget at moneypeach.com/budget. And anyway, they downloaded the budget and they're realizing, okay, we can pay off this debt faster if we can generate some more income on the side. Now, how do I do that? And that's where Nick Loper comes in.
That's what it's all about. Let's go through some of you want some off the wall examples, or you want
give me something that's memorable, right? I mean, I've heard a bunch of crazy ones. We've had some of your guests actually come on our show as well to talk about some of the things they did, but something unique that's going to stand out.
Okay. Did you talk to Teresa Greenway?
No, I did not.
Okay, so I call her the sourdough queen of the Northwest. She is a mother of 10, I believe, and her daughter, one of her daughters, challenged her at one point, Mom, nobody can make real sourdough. Nobody can make perfect sourdough. And so she's like, well, you know what? That sounds like a challenge. She has one of the world's largest, like, privately held baking Facebook groups. She's got like 35,000 people in there at the time that we spoke. She's making $4 or $5 grand a month, teaching people how to bake bread on this platform called Udemy. It's like a peer-to-peer education platform, udemy.com. I was blown away by this. And where it gets even more inspiring is she kind of like escaped an abusive relationship to do this. And she told me she filmed her first course in kind of like this dingy, oily garage with like horrible lighting. And she says, Nick, there's a lot of close-ups of my hands in that course working the dough because I don't want to zoom out. I don't want you to see the ugly wall. I don't want you to see the oil stain on the floor. But like that was the springboard, like making do with what you have when you have it and making something happen. So I really like her story. And
how much did you say? Was it $4,000 to $5,000 or $45,000?
Yeah, between $4,000 and $5,000 a month.
That's something I think, like when you hear somebody say, I make $45,000 a month, it's like, yeah, but what if you're just getting started?
Yeah.
So you can just get started and you can literally make $4,000 to $5,000 a month. I mean, think about that would be life changing for people. $4,000 to $5,000 extra a month. And she just took an idea. What does she make? Sourdough bread, took an idea and marketed it, monetized on it.
Yeah, she's got like a dozen courses out there. And I asked her, I was like, are you afraid of like running out of content? And she was like, oh, honey, I could do the breads I'm just scratching the surface. I was like, okay, sorry. So I kind of showed my naivete on the baking world. But
what episode was that, Nick? Do you know off the top of your head? We'll link to it.
That is episode 240 on the Side Hustle Show.
Okay. Anything that Nick mentions as far as episodes, we're going to have links in the show notes for that. What else you got, Nick?
So what else? So there's a lot kind of on that teaching front. So I met a guy who runs pianoin21days.com. He was an engineer by day, quit his engineering job to teach this online piano course. He made like 20 grand in the month that we spoke, like kind of a crazy story there. So that's kind of like I'm going to build a business around my expertise, around my authority, and I'm going to sell like a product. And you could sell one-on-one consulting and coaching based on that too. But that's kind of maybe a higher tier way to go. Maybe an easier way to get started is kind of that freelancing model where, we talked about Vincent Puglisi, the photographer who walked in and got his 3% raise and was like, thanks, but no thanks, So the freelancing route has, no overhead, no startup costs. And even like examples from my own experience, like you could consider painting a side hustle. My wife's side hustle is as a wedding photographer by day. She's an engineer as well. One that I've done is like book editing and kind of the criteria that you can use to try and find a potential service idea. I'll call it like the intersection method. So on your piece of paper, you'll have 3 columns. Column 1 is like your expertise, your skills. Like you can even go through your resume and say like by definition, any job I've ever had, right? That was a skill somebody thought was worth paying for. And then you can kind of itemize the skills you've learned outside of work, which at this point is almost everything that I know related to online stuff has been learned outside of work. So that's column 1. Column 2 is like what you care about, what you're interested in, what your hobbies are, what do you like to do. So column 1 for me was like, hey, one of the items in column 1 was like, hey, I was a decent English student. I can barely speak, but I could write okay. And in column 2, it was like, what do you like to do? Well, I enjoy reading, and specifically, I enjoy reading business books. And then in column 3, it's kind of like your network or your connections. Like, who do you know, and who did they know? Maybe more importantly, who do they know? And so that was kind of the freelancing business that I started a couple years ago, was doing freelance book editing. And I said specifically, look, I don't want to read your vampire romance novel, but you've got a self-published business book. Like, I'm your guy. And here's my track record. Like, I published a couple books of my own at this point and had kind of embedded myself in a couple communities of self-published authors and started raising my hand when people were asking for editors.
So you freelance yourself. So Side Hustle Nation, is this your full-time job right now?
It is the main focus now. So I started it on the side from the shoe business, and rest in peace. The shoe business died maybe a year and a half after that. And gratefully, the Side Hustle Nation stuff kind of was in a position to take over in terms of revenue at that point. Okay.
And so, I mean, you don't have to share any numbers or anything like that, but you do live in San Francisco, correct? Or just outside?
Yeah, we're out in the East Bay suburbs.
Okay. So, but higher real estate than most other places around the country.
Yeah.
And so the revenue from Side Hustle Nation is allows you a comfortable living in the Bay Area.
Yes.
But you still side hustle yourself.
Yeah, I try to. I mean, that's kind of the 3 revenue streams on the site, or kind of the 3 main ones are, sponsorships on the podcast, sponsorships on the Side Hustle Show, affiliate offers through the site and through the email list. And the third tier is kind of like my own side hustle experiment. So I still have some other affiliate sites going on. It could be the freelancing stuff. It could be the self-publishing stuff. It could be some of the one this year that we were most excited about is like merch by Amazon. It's like a print on demand t-shirt, thing that Amazon has put together. That's been a ton of fun. And then even dabbling with some of like the Amazon FBA, that's fulfillment by Amazon, where you can go and buy crap at Walmart and flip it on Amazon for a profit.
Okay, and then tell me about, you have virtual assistant. What's that?
So that's one of the side hustles right now. That's an affiliate site that I run. It is actually the web's largest directory and review platform for virtual assistant companies and kind of outsourcing services. So I've been running that actually longer than Side Hustle Nation. I started that one in 2011.
So here's what's so funny about that is, as we were growing, we were looking, okay, we need to probably get an assistant. Because when you grow your business, Nick, you become like customer service rep, website design, Facebook community manager, email list. You're doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to get some help here. So I Googled, you're great in the Google machine, by the way. I Google like virtual assistant reviews. So
perfect.
Virtual
That's like my main keyword.
Pops up. Yes. Virtual assistant pops up, or assistant. I'm reading through there. And so I hit the about page, because when you're a online geek like me, that's one of the things you do is you go to the about page.
Oh, for sure.
And then I realized, oh my gosh, this is Nick's site. And I think I sent you a text like, hey, I have a question about virtual assistants.
Like, hey,
remember
dude,
that?
Is this you? Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, yeah, that's me. I'm like, this is so crazy. I'm reading through this and, oh, it's you. So how long have you had Side Hustle Nation now?
Since 2013. So it's about 4.5 years old.
4.5 years. Weekly show?
Weekly show.
Weekly show, 260 episodes in. So, I mean, the cool thing now is you've put in the time and the effort. And I think a lot of people say like, oh, this Side Hustle Nation is an overnight success. And you're like, no, it's overnight success, 260 episodes, 260 weeks in the making. But some of the things that I've noticed just like recently, I think I sent you a message. I was like, this is cool, is I turned on my computer and I was reading different articles and Business Insider popped up and you were on the front page of Business Insider. This was like maybe a month ago. It's just neat to see that you've put in these massive levels of effort, and you went from literally, remember, we go back to day one, and you were starting from the very bottom and then down even further because the Google machine, pulled the rug out. And then fast forward now, you're doing what you love. You have a thriving business and you're being recognized, for, having a great podcast. I'm seeing you in some of the biggest media outlets there are, for our niche. And so I mean, basically what I want to say is congratulations, because the story behind Side Hustle Nation is more than just what you see today. It's the having the nerve to leave your job and then struggling right day one and then, coming out the other end. But the cool thing is, this is why I think you've had a lot of success, Nick, is I listen to your show all the time. you provide massive levels of value for people to go out there and figure out a way to generate more income. And making more money is much cooler than some of the stuff that I tell people to do is like, hey, you need to turn your cable off, right? Or you need to, sell your car.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear
like,
that.
I wish I would have figured out what Nick was doing and telling people, no, don't cut off your cable. Just go make, an extra $1,000 making bread,
Well, there's two ways to go about it, right? Two ways to get rich. You can make more or you can desire less. And that's something that I try and live by. But there's a limit to how much you can cut.
There is. You can only cut so much and then life's no longer fun. So somebody that's listening right now, Nick, where can they find you and what episode would you point them to? Or maybe a few episodes, and we'll put those in the show notes because I know they're going to leave me now and they're going to go listen to you, but I know that there's value that you're going to provide. So what show would you recommend?
So one of the best episodes to start with is episode 87 with Brian Harris. He walks through a 5-step system to quit your job in the next 12 months. And specifically, he's talking about starting up a service business and talks about, how to figure out what service you could offer, how to go get clients. I think that one is a really good place to start.
And that's Brian Harris. He's Video Fruit?
Yes, Brian Harris from Video Fruit. Then you can kind of choose your own adventure. Like I would probably not recommend binging from the beginning. Like I'm kind of embarrassed by the first several episodes, but find the ones that sound interesting to you. I mean, if you're working on a blog or trying to sell online courses, there's stuff related to that. If you're trying to start a freelance or service business, there's stuff related to that. Or if you're thinking, hey, maybe e-commerce is the route for me, there's a bunch of stuff related to that as well. A lot kind of in the Amazon realm.
Very cool, Nick. And so it's sidehustlenation.com. And where else can they find you? Are you on Twitter, Facebook, anything like that?
I'm on the Twitters. I'm on the Facebooks. My handle is @nloper, and Facebook is, I don't know. I don't do much on my personal Facebook page, but there's a Facebook group for Side Hustle Nation. It's sidehustlenation.com/FB. We'll redirect over there.
And that's free?
Oh, for sure.
Awesome. Well, okay, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been fun. And I don't think I'm ever going to climb above you in the Google machine on the rankings, but it is fun that every time I go check the Google rankings to see where we're at, if we're on page 1 or page 2, it's nice that I'll always see Side Hustle Nation first.
You're climbing quick. I got to build a little trench around that.
You got one. It's your URL, Side Hustle. I mean, it's amazing. So, hey, Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
And just like that, we wrap up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. All the show notes, the links, anything that Nick and I talked about can be found over at moneypeach.com/session77. That's moneypeach.com/session77. Special thanks goes out to my producer, Steve Stewart, and my assistant, Kayla Sloan. Without them, this show would not be possible. Stay tuned next week for episode 78, where I bring on the college investor, Robert Farrington.
I help young adults get out of student loan debt so that they can start investing and building wealth as early as possible, ideally in college or sooner. But honestly, if you can just start investing as soon as possible, you can start building wealth and you'll have a nice nest egg a lot earlier than other people.
Thanks so much for listening, and boom shakalaka. Boom.